Limiting stories are the ones that present themselves as if they are true. Facts, our stories of our own past, are heartfelt and yet fiction. All we know is that it is true that we were born. We may not know for sure who our parents, siblings, and other key players in our drama were, but our version of all of them, the meaning and the memory that we narrate to all who will listen, is our creation. Made up, fiction. And this is good news, for it means that a new story can be concocted anytime we choose.
My story is Apple Valley High School and Eagle Pride. My story is AVID and STEM, language arts and credit recovery, volleyball and speech, selling tickets and keeping stats, leading professional development and training tutors, and one big question: now what?
Doubt and no are symbolic expressions of people finding their space and role in the future. It is when we fully understand what people do not want that choice becomes possible. Dissent in this way is life-giving or life-affirming. It is the refusal to live the life someone else has in mind for us. As an individual, it is the moment when we acknowledge that we are not the children our parents, guardians, teachers had in mind. We have disappointed others and for too long internalized that disappointment. The moment we say no to the expectations of others about who they wish us to be, the moment we declare, "I am not that person," our adulthood begins.
To learn is to risk. To lead others toward profound levels of learning is to risk. To promote personal and organizational renewal is to risk. To create schools hospitable to human learning is to risk. In short, the career of the lifelong learner and of the school-based reformer is the life of the risk-taker.
In order to create communities of learners, teachers must model for students the most important enterprise of the schoolhouse: learning.
My story is hope and inspiration, but self-doubt. My story is, I wonder, and what if?
There are other kinds of stories that in their telling become a limitation. Limiting stories are personal versions of the past. They are stories about the conclusions we draw from events that happen to us. Other limiting stories are those that are rehearsed or make the point that the future will be slightly modified continuation of the past out of which the story arose. Stories of this nature place us as victims of events or even fate.
We routinely ask our youngsters, "What did you learn in school today?" It is every bit as important to ask ourselves, "What did I learn in school today?" What do we do in our spare time? Are we talking with colleagues about practice, visiting other classes, taking courses, maintaining a journal, reading, or watching TV, paying bills, and hanging out?
Personal reflection on our experience is how we learn from experience. Reflection contributes to the refinement of subsequent action and to the building of a repertoire of professional craft knowledge. And of course, reflecting on practice by observing practice, by writing about practice, by engaging in conversation about practice, by embracing the differences we encounter in practice, builds a school culture hospitable to both learning and community.
My story is honest administrators and colleagues who pour belief into all those who need it.
I think that there are individuals who are born with certain charisma that people feel that they're a natural leader, but there are other people who have to become leaders based upon circumstances or situations that are placed in front of them. It's kind of a funny subject with regard to what you believe, but my belief system is that leaders are made based upon the circumstances that take them there.
All teachers can lead. If schools are going to become a place where all children and adults are learning in worthy ways, all teachers must lead. Schools suffer from an overabundance of underutilized talent. The fact of the matter is that all teachers harbor extraordinary leadership capabilities waiting to be unlocked and engaged for the good of the school.
My story is learning teams and literacy groups, book clubs and workshops. My story is department meetings with more dialogue than discussion, and observing and wondering how we make decisions to move forward.
This mindset that the other is the problem means that we need to wait for them to change before the change we want in the world can come to pass. And until they change, we need to stay distant and contain them. This diverts us from the realization that we have the means, the tools, the thinking to create a world we want to inhabit and to do it for all. If we see others as another aspect of ourselves, we would welcome them into our midst. We would let them know that they belong, that they are neighbors with all their complexity.
Focus on gifts. First and foremost, he asserts that community is built by focusing on people's gifts rather than their deficiencies. If we care about transformation, then we will stay focused on gifts to such an extent that our work becomes to simply bring the gifts of those on the margin into the center. Simply put, this movement declares that if we want to make communities stronger, we should study their assets, resources, and talents. It is in the attention to these things that something new can occur.
To create a community of accountability and belonging, we seek conversations where the following is true. An intimate and authentic relatedness is experienced. The world is shifted through invitation rather than mandate. The focus is on the communal possibility. There's a shift in ownership of this place, even though others are in charge. Diversity of thinking and dissent are given space. Commitments are made without barter. The gifts of each person and our community are acknowledged and valued.
My story is a desire to maintain a community where anyone who wants a voice can have one. My story is messy and chaotic, struggle and survival.
In a culture of change, emotions frequently run high, and when they do, they often represent differences of opinion. People express doubts or reservations, and sometimes outright opposition to new direction. Defining effective leadership as appreciating resistance is another one of those remarkable discoveries. Dissent is seen as a potential source of new ideas and breakthroughs. The absence of conflict can be a sign of decay.
Successful organizations don't go with only like-minded innovators. They deliberately build in differences. They don't mind so much when others, not just themselves, disturb the equilibrium. They also trust the learning process that they set up. The focus on moral purpose, the attention to the change process, the building of relationships, the sharing and critical scrutiny of knowledge, and the traversing the edge of chaos while seeking coherence.
It is important to be on that edge, because that is where creativity resides. But anarchy lurks there too. Therefore, effective leaders tolerate enough ambiguity to keep the creative juices flowing, but along the way, they seek coherence. Coherence making is a perennial pursuit.
My story is ultimately about them, the batch of students who show up every trimester. My story is our beautiful diversity, a constant reminder of the moral purpose central to this work.
Listening may be the single most powerful action the leader can take. Leader will always be under pressure to speak, but if building social fabric is important and sustained transformation is the goal, then listening becomes the greater service.
A vision is a kind of moral imagination that gives school people, individually and collectively, the ability to see their school not only as it is, but also as they would like it to become. It is an overall conception of what educators want their school to stand for, a map revealing how all the parts fit together, and, above all, just how the vision of each individual is related to the collective vision of the organization.
If the first major purpose of a school is to create and provide a culture hospitable to human learning, the second major purpose of a school is to make it likely that students and educators will become and remain lifelong learners. If it's true that character is what you do when no one is looking, then learning is what you do when you're not graded for it.
We must begin by naming the existing content and evolving to a way of thinking that leads to a new conversation that produces a new content. Every time we gather, it becomes a model of the future we want to create.
The communal possibility rotates on the question, what can we create together? This emerges from the social space we create when we are together. It is shaped by the nature of the culture within which we operate, but is not controlled by it. This question of what we can create together is at the intersection of possibility and accountability. Possibility without accountability results in a wishful thinking. Accountability without possibility creates despair, for even if we know we are creating the world we exist in, we cannot imagine it being any different from the past that got us here.
My story is gratitude for the people and experiences that have shaped my past and led me here. My story is still evolving. After all, it's never too late to be who you might have been.